Welcome to the Growth Over Grades podcast, a show connecting you with thought leaders, pioneers, and change agents who are leading the charge to support schools and districts in making the shift toward competency-based education and to promote growth over grades. I'm Jordan Lewis, and on the show today, we have distinguished educator and digital innovator, Mike Lang. Mike is currently the Managing Director of Reimagining and Design at the Center for Future of Learning. With 18 years of invaluable experience as a classroom teacher, Mike's also been recognized as an Apple Distinguished Educator, a PBS Digital Innovator, and a Heart of Education Award winner. Outside of the classroom, he's a man who believes the only way to drink coffee is black, a testament to his no-nonsense approach to clarity and impact that he brings into the classroom. His deep understanding of the classroom, combined with his passion for innovative design, makes him a true champion for rethinking how we approach learning and assessment. Today, we go deep to explore what it means to reimagine education, how through rethinking what our classrooms look like, we need to remodel and remold the role of the teacher. We discuss how to empower students in creating agency and how agency helps to mold competencies, and through this, how teachers can use cutting-edge prompting frameworks to create authentic learning experiences to help foster a culture where student growth truly takes precedence over traditional grades. Now, to my conversation with Mike Lang. Hey, Mike. Thank you so much, first off, for joining us on the show today. We're really grateful to have you and your innovation mindset to talk to us here today. Mike, today we're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to talk a lot about student agency, shifting school culture. We're going to be talking about doing all that with innovative learning technologies. But just to help us sort of set that stage, let's start off kind of at the baseline, Mike, and define student agency in the context of learning. So what does it mean for students to truly have this agency in that learning?
I think it boils down, Jordan. Oh, first of all, thanks for having me on. I think it boils down to value. And do our learners understand their value, what to value, and how to value it once they're in learning spaces and learning environments? I think it's an important thing because once they feel like they're valued, I think young people have a propensity to be authentic, propensity to risk take, propensity to create and display and present the way that they see the world. And I think that is the vehicle for agency is just when I feel valued in the space and I know what is of value in that space, I can move to be productive. But if that is, those things aren't defined, if my value isn't determined or isn't evident to me and to those in my community, I think it becomes a challenge for learning institutions to get the best out of the young people in learning environments.
It's interesting. You talk a lot about giving the opportunity for them to just be authentic in their learning and authentic in that experience. And it just makes me think for teachers who may be struggling with bringing more agency into their classroom. Imagine a world where your administration didn't allow you to teach the way that you felt was best for your students and what that would feel like. It's really easy to empathize with that when we think about, well, why do we do it for our students, right?
Yes. I mean, it becomes kind of a conundrum, right? Where you're
sure.
Like, hey, I want freedom, but I'm not going to give this freedom and this ability to really speak from a perspective as I'm doing things that's, again, authentic to myself. I'm parroting, what you're saying, or the only way to be right is the way that the educator in the room wants things to be right. And but I think that there are tons of educators that I've worked with and experienced with workshops and professional development experience and stuff that really are leaning into I can put the ingredients on the table that are necessary for learning to happen and allow the young people to create their own smorgasbord, if you will, with the components that are necessary to do what we need them to be able to do.
Right. And when I was, Mike, going through teachers training and working to become a teacher, there was very much this methodology around, okay, you're going to kind of teach to the test, the outcome, the standard. You track it in that grade book over time. You're going to average it out. You're going to put it on the report card. And it's that very traditional notion about our classroom and our education system. But what you're talking about now is sort of flipping that script and giving students more voice and choice in their learning. So from your experiences, like, how do you see this challenging the traditional notions of our system? And we can take it both from just the teaching and learning aspect, but I also see this challenging the role of the teacher as well.
Well, I mean, I'm a foodie, and I think lots of people out there are foodies that, like you go to restaurants, you win experiences, this place does it. But when you walk into a restaurant, you probably are going to places where you're going to have choice, right? Even if it's a hamburger joint, I can want a hamburger. I can put whatever toppings I'd like. I can take the toppings off, changing the buns, the condiments, all the things like that. And I can still have an experience in a restaurant that is pleasant, regardless of the fact that I might order something totally different from the people that are eating with me, right? And we are still in the same restaurant, still, able to collaborate, to converse, to eat, despite the fact that the same things aren't on our plates. And to me, as we navigate, especially this new era where we're going to have tools that can do things that they couldn't do previously, access to information and strategies that perhaps were a little bit more difficult to come by in previous epochs in American classrooms, or in the classrooms in the world. How do we give everyone that restaurant quality experience when they walk in again? The point is that they leave happy and full, not they leave with the same thing on their plate, or they order the same thing, right? And I think we need to take a chef's mindset that I do have certain culinary skills or certain pedagogical skills in a way. But I am able to understand the diners enough through surveying, through observations, through market research, that I'm like, okay, cool. This is the niche that I need to fill in order for people to come through that door and to have an experience that's positive. And I think when we flip that dynamic where educators are cognizant of whatever standards need to be there, whatever, curricular expectations are there, whatever, but they shield those standards and those curricular expectations from the diner, because I'm going to go and I'm going to create meals that hide those things in there. You're going to be doing all the things that the state or the province or the federal government says you need to do. But Jordan, I hate onions. And if I see onions in my food, I won't eat them. All right. And drove my wife crazy once when we got married and we were dating stuff. Whatever. If I see onions in my food, I will not eat it. And she knows this. And so what does my wife do as a strategy to still cook? Onions are they're pretty vital food stuff, right? In order to flavor things, etc. She either takes large chunks of onions so that she can remove them easily as she's cooking, or she dices and minces them so small that I'm not even aware that they're in the food. And so one of the things I talk about when I'm working with educators is, how do you hide the onions? How are you making sure that the stuff that I don't like, it's in there, but I don't see it? And I'm still doing the things that are necessary, and I'm still happy, and this is delicious, et cetera, but you've hidden the pieces of the curricula, the things that are things that might turn me off. You're hiding them in such a way that you're allowing me to still plug in to the experience in a positive way. Right.
Just a few things to unpack, I think. I mean, kudos to your wife for adapting to your needs, because I could tell you for free, Mike, if that was me in those shoes, I would intentionally cook with onions so I didn't have to share my dinner. That would be the goal. But I love that analogy when we think about this, because it's just such a different way of approaching the concept. And it really got me thinking, I can go to the same restaurant, 5, 6, 7 different times. I can have something different each time, which is a different experience each time, but the outcome remains the same.
Absolutely.
I'm still leaving full. And I feel like a lot of times teachers are challenged around giving students the opportunity to show their learning in different ways to meet the same outcome, to truly understand where they're at in grasping those concepts.
Well, and, to your point, I think that is true. And I think it's true because one of the things lots of educators underestimate in their skill set is their ability to sell. Right? And any job in which you're in front of other humans is a sales job. I need you to comport yourself in some way because you want to do this. And I've given you reasons to do this. And this is why I detest the term classroom management. I'm not managing young people. I am attempting to get young people to opt in to a lesson, a unit, an experience, because I've made it engaging and attractive. And generally, when we make things engaging and attractive, there are no behavioral problems. There are no issues with people like, having, static with other individuals. I want to be here. And if I were removed from the situation, I would not be happy about it. And this is, again, when you have this welcoming environment, you have an environment that is warm, where, again, I can order what I need to and still leave full. I think, those restaurants stay packed. Those are the ones that you have to have reservations for. Or there's a certain, aesthetic that they bring that regardless of how much XYZ is per plate, people are willing to fork that money over, right? And say, hey, look, this hamburger was so delicious, I would pay the $45 for it or whatever it is, because this experience was that rich for me. And so the thing that has to happen when you're selling is you have to do market research, right? You have to survey people. I have to know what you like and what you don't like. And oftentimes it is, this conveyor belt, let's just throw slop on a plate and say, hey, this is what we're serving today, eat up. Rather than saying the first couple of days of school, like, what does it look like to build a survey instrument that really gets to a point where we can, first of all, make sure that the data is anonymous. So we're not tagging, kids or, using our own biases to imply that certain kids are certain ways. But, getting a great demographic, just footprint of who's in the classroom. Why are they here? What do they like? What don't they like, et cetera? And one of the things that I try to do with teachers is just demonstrate to them the power of building personas. Right. Here's this survey instrument. Let's build some personas that we're going to constantly refer to as we're thinking about instructional opportunities in the classroom. And this is where a lot of the AI tools come in very handy, because you can build those chat bots that you can interact with. Here's this persona. Here's this data that you're going to be, this perspective that you're going to be thinking from or seeing things from. And as I'm building instructional experiences, I want to be able to bounce these off of you and see, okay, cool. I've got a lot of second language learners in this classroom. How might they interact here? I've got young people who have ADHD. How are they going to interact here? I've got I've got a kid who's on the autism spectrum. How is this person going to react? I've got kids who are not working optimally at the beginning of school because their brain comes on at 11:30 or 12 o'clock. How do I make sure that kid is engaged as well? So I think there's plenty of opportunities for us, as, again, given the technology that we have now at our fingertips, to not personalized, because I don't really like the term personalized, because I think there are very few things in life that are personalized that are only for you. Like there are experiences that, you don't go to a personalized doctor. You go to a doctor that is well acquainted with the anatomy and physiology of the human being that you might have a personal relationship with, but not one that is the only doctor that works on you and your body, right? That's not a thing. how do we make things more accessible so that the educational experience in the classroom end in a way that allows a young person to demonstrate authentically that they understand or that they don't understand something. And that is, I think, the goal for our learning environments now.
And I think it's an idea that often gets challenging for teachers to think about. That word personalized, it's becoming quite a buzzword, especially with adopting technologies and innovative technologies. Everybody's promoting, personalized learning solutions. And in my experience of seeing things that really work and make sense, I'm just seeing very similar related to the persona that you were talking about. And it first comes to knowing your students. Like, you have to take time to know each student in your room and take a genuine interest in them as humans prior to trying to advance the learning. And then that idea of personalization doesn't have to be, I'm creating 35 unique lesson plans. It's like, no, they're all working toward the same outcome, but perhaps the content is shifted. Hey, Jordan, you really like baseball. I'm going to have baseball examples that are going to be in your lesson plan versus Mike, who really loves going to unique restaurants. So he's going to have more food catered, but the outcome is the same. Absolutely. I feel like a lot of educators get kind of hung up on that, and they overcomplicate it before even taking the step.
Absolutely. That I think that hits the nail on the head. In addition to the fact that, there are lots of things that we enjoy that don't even pretend to be personalized or have limits to the personalization in the experience. And, I play video games a lot as well. There are no personalized video games, right? The game is designed, it's built. I may be to personalize my character by colors or their height or build or whatever. But in terms of the experience in the game, it is a experience where the word that I think is more apropos for learning environments happens. There are choices that I can make. There are playing styles I can adapt. There are opportunities for me to collaborate or not do so. There are, if it's an open world game, I can go around in circles if I want to, or I can delay doing the main mission because I'm doing these side things, or I can just fish or whatever it is, right? And so how do you create the opportunity for people to make choices in your learning environment? That would be, hey, I'm a baseball guy, so I'm going to, talk about, the 92 Blue Jays when I'm rocking and rolling when I'm doing things, or I'm going to look at things from the perspective of cats. I'm a cat person, and this is the history of the domestication. I would argue that cats are not domesticated, but it is what it is.
That's another podcast.
But again, bringing the authentic perspective of a young person to bear in the classroom, where they can speak as an expert or as someone who's interested in something that's a system that might be able to impact positively their ability to do work in the classroom.
And I feel to all the listeners that are there, you could probably think back to at least one experience that you had as an educator where, whether it was intentional or not, you did that, you created an activity where students had that autonomy and probably had a really memorable experience. When I share often with colleagues or with district leaders about something, I had one really kind of foundational moment like this, and it was not an intentional component. It was, I used to be a music teacher, and I said, hey, we need to, as part of the curriculum, learn about music history, but I didn't want to just bore my students with a straight up history lesson. So I said, okay, every single day, one of you is going to come to the front of the class and you're going to present a piece of music of your choice, whatever you want. You're going to tell the class on why you enjoyed it, about the musical stylings and about that piece of music. And then I want you to look at connecting it to what we're learning in music history, connect that to, inspirations, etc. And I'm telling you, these kids took to that project. And what it did for me as a teacher was, I got to see students who were really passionate and get to experience a whole wide variety of things, which I thought was really cool. 2, I got to see the students excited when they got to class and it was their day to present, which some days they were, some days they weren't. And 3, I got to know more about those students in those moments than I did throughout the rest of the semester.
Absolutely. That's cool.
And it was just one of those pivotal moments that was just kind of off the cuff. And now that we're in 2025, naming this, like we're really putting a name towards this idea. It's becoming so prevalent. I think, again, it's not rocket science to put in that effort. But Mike, when I was hearing you talk, and especially around that notion of not personalizing, but making it more accessible and engaging, one piece that I kind of thought about was we can, as teachers, help personalize how the student is documenting, reflecting on their learning. But when we think about that authentic documentation, a lot of perhaps instructional shifts need to happen in our classroom. So can you just talk to us a little bit about how can we aim to start like making this a reality?
Man, I think everything should be product based. And so when people are big into the project based learning, and I'm like, look, at the end of the day, what did you make? What is the tangible thing that you can demonstrate to another person to say, this is what I learned, not the test, not the, sheet of paper. This is what I made, and this is how it impacts the world, right? This is how you know I was here. And Miss Eileen Davis, shout out to Miss Davis, was one of my freshman English teacher at Banneker Academic High School, Washington, D.C. She's still alive and kicking. She's still doing great work. We had to read the Epic of Gilgamesh my freshman year in high school. And if you ever read Gilgamesh, it's a very challenging piece because it's very philosophical. It's talking about immortality and how do you know someone was here and like the struggles through life and at the end of that story, Gilgamesh essentially puts his name on a wall and says, hey, Gilgamesh was here. I'm here. How do you help kids build the wall that say I was here, right? That is the thing that lets me know that you existed and what you did. And his story is there on that wall at the end, right? And so to me, everything has to be, what is the product? What is the podcast that you produce? What's the script? What is the photo essay? What's the conversation that you had? Who are what community did you serve by doing what you did, right? Did you go and design a reading program for seniors in your community because you saw that there was a need for seniors to have connection with young people, in their environment? Did you have an opportunity to look at what are the environmental challenges of your community, your province, your city, your state, et cetera, that you might be able to lend some brain cells to? Did you notice that there were mental health struggles in your environment, and we have applied, some science research that you were doing in your biology class to how we might get people together? How are you using what you are experiencing to build something? And again, build something and not hide it in the closet, but build something and present it publicly so that people can help you either improve it or, hey, rethink. Does that actually solve the problem that you thought about? And I hate when, personally, I despise when kids go and we're doing projects in the classroom and you're like, hey, yo, who are you going to have them present to? Oh, they're not going to present it. What is the point of me spending 3 weeks on a thing and it just no one sees it? So to me, there is, with the bounty of publishing tools that we have at our fingertips as an internet connected world, for kids not to have blogs, portfolios, Zoom calls where they're bringing and they're talking to experts and presenting their information to experts, just going down and rounding up other adults in a system, the principal, presenting in front of another class. Those kind of things where you are forced, similar to what you described, where the young people you're going to have a day in which you're going to have to be prepared to have this song, and you're going to speak to your peers about why this song has value in conjunction to or with respect to music history. And you're going to have a persuasive argument that gives us the valid reasons why you hold this particular position. Well, that's a lot of pressure. And it's also an opportunity for me to display that I know something about something and I am therefore valued. To me, that's the core of this life, man. Like, James Paul G., the former linguistics professor at Arizona State University, he has a book called The Anti-Education Agenda, which is one of the books that I always tell like first year educators, early years educators to kind of look at and think about, because his argument in the first like 3/4 of the book is like, we get everything with education wrong. And then the last part is like, this is how you fix it. And one of the things that he says that has always stuck with me since reading that text is, we never judge humans by themselves. We only judge humans with what they can do with tools. And if you start to think about that, that is absolutely true. I don't care what you can do, Jordan, with your own hands. What I care about is what you can do with a guitar. The guitar is the tool that you actually, your genius, your imagination, creativity, that's the vessel that demonstrates that. But even your hands are tools, your fingers are tools. So in order to demonstrate your value in a situation, I have to see what you can do with the tool. And how do we get young people access to as many tools as possible so you can see these are the onions and these are the things that I like? Mm-hmm. Because how do I know I don't like onions, Jordan? Because I've eaten them before. I've eaten them in lots of different ways. I'm like, I don't like them pickled. I don't like them stewed. I don't like them whole. I understand because I've had many experiences. So it's not shielding kids all the time from the onions. It is going and strategically saying, hey, sometimes you got to eat the onions. And that's going to tell you, hey, I don't like this. But guess what? You're also not learning in a vacuum. You have other collaborators in the classroom. That's another thing that we don't do as educators enough, is saying, I don't like onions, but guess what? Jordan does. So when I'm partnering with Jordan, you're going to eat the onions and then I'll eat the other things. And we can now we're putting together like this super person who loves onions, but at the same time loves perhaps some things that you don't like. You don't like jalapenos or, whatever food you don't like. I do. Those things, that's my jam right there, Jordan. Now with this circuit, this union in which you can take parts that I'm not good at and I can take parts that you're not good at, and we're put together the situation. So we also have a situation, this is where the personalized thing becomes dangerous. I don't want things always to be personalized because I want you to see value in other humans and what other humans can bring to the table, and that you're not going to be the best video editor. You're not going to be the best sound engineer. Because you don't need to do it. You're going to write the lyrics and somebody else is going to take care of the sound of the guitar playing and whatnot. And I don't have to be the best at all the things because Jordan exists and Susie exists and Jill exists. And we're together a quartet that's going to go and play our song together in the way that needs to be sung.
Mike, when you started talking a lot about collaboration and the need to collaborate, and we'll circle back on this because the 21st century competencies and how we're trying to embed that into the classroom is becoming incredibly pivotal. And I know you have some really great ideas around prompting frameworks to accelerate some of these shifts that we'll get to in a moment. But just hearing you talk really wants me to ask for your opinion on when you talk to educators about these sort of pieces, collaborating and having students work together, all having a piece of the bigger puzzle to produce a really unique product. What is your opinion when teachers resist because they say, like, that wouldn't that be great, but how do I measure that? Like, how do I measure student growth when they're each doing something different on that product? I can't measure them all the same.
And that's when we have to step back and look at how the actual world works, right? Sometimes we look at the artificial edifice, the artificial scenarios that happen in school as if this is how the world functions. That is not how the world functions. When you are, and I'm assuming this is the same in Canada, when we say, hey, a school is a XYZ rated school, right? It is the rating for the school, not for the individual teacher. We don't have the first grade teacher contributed XYZ, and the second grade, it says school A that's in Brampton has a so-and-so rating. And that is the thing that's done. And in terms of collaboration, that administrator comes through and says, hey, everyone, we need to all work to our highest capabilities in order to make sure that we move up a star or whatever the framework is for rating schools in Canada. Move up a star, do what we need to do. At no point is there a single teacher school. Right? There's always multiple teachers doing multiple things. They're support staff, they're administrators, they're janitorial staff. There's someone who's taking care of the outside. It's a collaborative experience, whether you want to recognize that or not. Companies, collaborative experience. You can't do everything at your company, right? There's plenty of people who are going to go and take different pieces and say, okay, cool. Here's the vision that we want. Who's going to take this role and that role and this thing and be responsible for it, right? So if we want young people to be successful in the actual world, we need to start looking at how the actual world exists and say, okay, you don't need to know everything about everything. You need to know a piece and be able to evolve your skill set enough that you're malleable regardless of how the environment changes. This is one of the big things with the AI thing. Oh, it's going to replace people. It's going to move people around. It's going to force people to explore different ways of being. But is it going to suddenly fundamentally destroy the idea of being a human? I don't foresee that, at least in the immediate sense. I think that humans have a great way of adapting. I think humans in systems that are working optimally are able to look and see there's opportunity in this place. Let's go and look at how Jordan's skill set fits here. The AI tool is going to take care of some of the mundanities and some of the efficiency in this particular place. But I always think about when we talk about collaboration, and get this, especially with I'm doing a lot of coaching and collaborating with teachers around the idea of co-intelligence with AI tools. And I always bring it back to Tony Stark. And if you've seen the first Iron Man film, Tony Stark is a genius. He's a genius without Jarvis. Right? He by himself is the engine that demonstrates this is how, I'm the man. Jarvis is built by Tony Stark to engage, to challenge, to collaborate, to make things more efficient, et cetera. In the same way that we will be working with another human. And we can substitute Jarvis for your bestie at work, your engineer, whatever. Great. This person is there to do those things. But at the end of the day, and I love how the film ends, Tony Stark, without the Iron Man suit, says one of the most iconic phrases in cinematic history. I am Iron Man, not the suit, I am the person who's done the things. And I think as long as we embody that kind of philosophy in which I have to collaborate with people, but me plus Jordan is an I. I don't see myself separate from Jordan because we're on the same team. And if you have success, I have success. Great. Team us one. But I think a lot of times what we get in, especially in very competitive economies, is this sense that if I help you, I am harming myself. I've hindered myself. I have, hamstrung my own ability to get further along. But if you look at the most efficient and the best working networks, they are networks in the truest sense. Hey, we are a team that is working together to do something. And you brought up music before. I can't play a lick of anything. I'm sorry, Miss Hamilton. I'm going to drop some more of my teachers' names. Miss Hamilton was my elementary school music teacher, and she recognized authentically that I was not someone who could play an instrument. But I loved listening to music. And so one of the things that she did was we really had a music appreciation course the entire time I was in elementary school that kind of exposed me to lots of ideas. And one of the things that I remember her dealing with is, Mike, you cannot play. I couldn't even play the triangle, Jordan. Like I could not hit that on beat. But one of the things you do, you have a great ear for music. And so while other kids were playing things, I would say, yo, I wonder what Count Basie would do right now. I wonder what Theolius Monk would do right now. That sounds like a Wilson Pickett riff. And suddenly she's like, oh, yeah, you're really picking up on this stuff. Yeah, I can hear it. I just can't play it. And my value in that environment was like, what if we did it like they do it in this song? What if we did it like they did it in this song? I really like this particular melody from this song, and being able to throw out ideas that the other kids in the classroom might pick up. But my value was not playing the instrument. And that didn't minimize my role in the class. It just said I had a different role. Right. And that, I think, as well, when we talk about collaboration, is important to recognize that just because my role is different from yours doesn't mean that it's less valuable. And I think a lot of times that's one of the things that we get caught up in, especially in education, that this person who only the special ed teacher is not as valuable as the general education first grade teacher, or the janitorial staff isn't as valuable as the individual who's the assistant principal or whatever. Like, how do we check our egos a little bit in order to understand that without everyone working their best, that we can't be our best together? And I'm not going to drop a product. I'm going to drop some research here. Herman Miller, high-end furniture store, they did some research. They had some research done on their behalf about collaboration and what are optimal collaboration strategies. If you are interested in understanding the roles and responsibilities in how you can have optimal collaboration in your classroom, go and Google Herman Miller collaboration. Free PDFs, free research. They have a lot of stuff from the United States Naval Academy, did a lot of research on collaboration strategies as well that they integrate into their particular documents. Really, really cool stuff. Changed the way that I've looked at how collaboration could work. I'll give you some very solid strategies that you can utilize day one in your classroom.
Herman Miller, we'll make sure we try to direct folks to find that stuff. But I do want to this time pivot a little bit, because you were talking a while ago about prompting frameworks and leveraging some of these technologies to kind of accelerate the shift, make it more efficient for students to grasp concepts, to lean into those 21st century skills. So where I'm curious is just to hear more about your experience with these prompting frameworks and kind of some of the work that you're doing right now, and how this is helping schools when it comes to bringing things like a portrait of a graduate kind of into their ecosystem.
So when we talk about prompting frameworks and whatnot, we're just talking about how do we allow the AI tools, regardless of what it happens to be, how do we control the output and the quality of that output by giving it conditions, and how do we also preserve what is uniquely human in those interactions? I mean, I think is another important thing. And as we're going through this particular part of human evolution and with tools, one of the capabilities that we have right now is the use of premortems. And when we say the words premortem, we're talking about how can we start to predict before we engage in activities what the outcomes might be. How then can we take those outcomes and then plan for, if there's any negative things that might happen, plan for those negative outcomes before we actually do the activity. And this is super important for educators, as we do not have a lot of time in class. It's one of the number one pet peeves of teachers, right? Hey, we don't have time to get through the entire book or the entire, curricula, right. And we'll have testing or whatever other things are going to happen. In the community that I live in, we have lots of transiency. So you have young people who miss school, young people who are food insecure, who are housing insecure. There's lots of complications as we attempt to help young people be the best versions of themselves. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I have been trying to demonstrate with educators is how do we take prompting frameworks and the ability to interact with some of these AI tools, take instructional frameworks, instructional perspectives, whether those be, things like Schlechte's work on engagement, Lee and Hannafin's work on, their instructional framework and pedagogical frameworks, any of your portrait stuff. And this is the other thing that's wonderful about the AI tools. Taking a PDF of your portrait and saying, okay, these are my questions, the competencies or whatever, and be able to feed that into a persona that you've built or into whatever AI tool that you're utilizing it, and being able to have a persona that constantly references your portrait as you're working with it on your instructional frameworks or your instructional experience, and to be able to say, look, how might a young person be empowered in this particular sense? Or is a young person actually empowered? Am I saying that, but they're not actually experiencing this during this lesson? Yes, they are. Or no, they aren't. This is the way we might be able to fix that particular thing. Because remember, you have students that have this proclivity or this thing. Great. Let me go ahead and before I do this lesson, let me see if I can fix that particular thing so that we can make sure that as we're doing it, I'm not getting frustrated because the young people aren't, reacting in the way that I expected. Right. And the young people aren't getting frustrated because they're like, hey, I don't even understand what this person is asking me to do. And so be able to simulate that is a superpower now that educators have at their fingertips to be able to say, here's the curricular expectation, here's the pedagogical framework that I'm going to use, here's the portrait, and here's the possible outcomes from this experience. And this is how these outcomes might be positive, but what are also the negative things that might happen at this thing, and how do I plan for those? And prompting frameworks, and there's tons of them that are out there, just give you a way, if you're not familiar with how to utilize the conversational strategies with AI tools, it just gives you a way to make those things standard. So as you're getting comfortable talking to your AI tools, you're doing it in a way that is going to get you the best output possible. It's also a great way to start to present that information to young people. And when I think one of the misnomers that is happening currently is that the young people are using XYZ tool in the classroom. You're like, yeah, they're using it, but are they using it in an optimal way? Are they using it in a way that's going to give them the best outputs possible? Do they have the digital literacy necessary to be able to construct the arguments, construct the questions, to construct the statements, to construct the narrative that is going to get them to the outputs they would like, that also demonstrate their own authenticity? That this is not XYZ tools output and me masquerading this as my own. This is me bringing myself to the fore, and I'm essentially having Jarvis help me with some of the background tasks that are necessary, rather than it's writing the essay about the War of 1812 for me, and I'm turning that in, and I have no idea about what the War of 1812 had in it anyway, and I don't really care anything about that. Which reminds me, if we're not in this particular age in human evolution, if we're not building experiences in classrooms and learning environments that are going to be engaging enough that I do not pawn that task off on whatever AI tool that I happen at my fingertips, then are we really having students display what they know authentically? If your task can be done by XYZ AI tool in 45 seconds, was your task actually worth?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, so often when I'm talking to friends who are teachers and perhaps they're stuck in more of a traditional system that's mandated by policy, or they're just not informed in terms of making that shift, or maybe they're just starting to make that shift and they're trying new tools or trying new processes. I always sort of say my belief is if my student, like around AI tools or other innovative technologies, is if you're asking a question that the AI can deliver the results of, and you're worried about plagiarism, you're asking the wrong questions, plain and simple. We need to shift how we're approaching these tools, how we're thinking about them, and how we're engaging our students.
Absolutely.
And Mike, just hearing you talk about some of these prompting frameworks and what it's doing, I'm wondering if you have any examples of a classroom that has sort of done this and like what some of the outcomes looked like, or what some of those products might have been. How did it kind of shift that classroom?
So one of the best things about my job is going in and finding teachers that are willing to be like risk takers with their the pedagogy at this particular point and say, okay, let's give this a rip. And so what we did with a local elementary school is I found 2 intrepid teachers and I said, hey, let's have kids build video games. And we're like, we never built video games before. I'm like, you don't need to have built anything before. We're not worried about your skill set. We're worried about the young people's skill set. What you have or have don't. And that, as a small aside, one of the biggest barriers to innovation in our classroom is teachers having to understand it before it gets into their room, right? And there are lots of things that you don't understand that you embrace on a regular basis. And I bring this up to teachers all the time. We don't really need mechanics in classrooms. We need drivers. All right. The vast majority of people who drive their cars have no idea how their drives work. If you ask them to explain the internal combustion engine, they would not be able to do so. If their battery died, I cannot change my own battery. I don't know. I call the AAA guy. That person comes over. They fix it. But you tell me that I go from point A to point B. I have the skill set to go and drive that vehicle from my house to wherever I need to go. I can use GPS. I know tools. I know backways, all those things. So how do we embrace the drive and not worry so much about, can we fix the car? So these 2 teachers, let's go. Let's give it a go. Now, I had taught kids, or I allowed kids to explore the creation of video games before. But I really wanted it to kind of play around with the idea that every kid could build a video game in the image that they wanted. It just had to be based on something they had read. And when I said based on something that they had read, it didn't matter what it was. It could have been an article in a Car and Driver magazine. It could have been a manga. It could have been the transcripts of a YouTube conversation, whatever was clever. They had to go and say, my inspiration is X. Great. We utilized that particular inspiration. We used a free AI tool, gave them a prompting framework, and allowed them to start teasing out, what would the basic framework of this game look like? What the main characters perhaps look like? What color schemes and costumes would those characters have? What would those characters' motivations be? Like things that would have taken like 6 months to do, before a lot of these tools existed, we were able to do in very short couple-hour bursts. Hey, and the kid was still coming with all the ideas. Mm-hmm. The kid was still coming with all inspiration. We were just giving Jarvis the ability to say, this is what I want to do. This is what it needs to look like. These are the outcomes that I want. What might that look like? And having those scenarios be able to be created instantaneously over and over again, and have the young people get the skill set to say, me prompting a tool once is not going to get me the answer that I want. And that's the other thing, Jordan, I think is a fallacy. Like, it is not prompt tool X and suddenly it gives you this pristine document that no. Anybody who's using these tools understands it's hours, it's days. No, you didn't understand what I wanted. I needed. So it is still a knowledge. It is important for young people to have the knowledge requisite to have the conversations with the tools. And that's another is a misnomer in this particular sense. You have to be super knowledgeable now, Jordan, in order to use these tools, because you have to analyze the output toward, is this real? Did this give me exactly what I wanted? If it didn't give me exactly what I wanted, how can I rephrase what I want in a way that's going to get me the output that I want? Do I need to give it more knowledge? Hey, this is an example of what I wanted. Here's let me give you a different, I'm going to rephrase this. I'm going to talk to a friend of mine who had got the output that I want. How did you do X, Y, and Z? Well, I said this is that. Great. Now I'm going to use that phrase or those words as I'm interacting with it. So it's still this knowledge economy that you have to be able to deal with. But as we went through this project, young people started to see, you know what? not only, again, is the AI tool valuable in terms of this work efficiency and efficacy, but the people in the room are also super valuable to me because certain people are getting outputs that I desire that I'm not getting. And I need to go walk over to someone else's computer and say, yo, I am not getting the thing that I want. How did you do that? Oh, let me go over to your computer and show you. Da, 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 da. Cool. Now I'm adding to my own knowledge so that when I interact with this tool again, I know if I want this output, I need to do these particular things. And so young people were putting, and these were third graders and fifth grade GATE students. So we're not talking about, high schoolers. We're not talking about young, and this is a regular comprehensive elementary school, lots of second language learners, low socioeconomic, outcomes in that particular neighborhood. We're not talking about some magnet school where the best and brightest, I'm putting that in quotation marks, are congregated, right? And so those young people were able to use generative art, AI tools for art to build, sketches of the characters for their games. Then they did the hard work of using the tool to build that character manually based on those sketches. They then had to write a story, build that story into the video games, and then they had to present those video games to the community. And so we had an arcade day where every kid in the school had an opportunity to go and play their games, give them feedback on the games. We brought adults from the community. We had a couple people from the city. We had administrators. They had to shoot a podcast. So they had to sit podcast. We had a mic set up in the front of the classroom. We recorded the podcast. We were able to publish that podcast so that other young people could hear it. And they also got all their arcade games published as well. And so people could play their arcade games and listen to their podcasts about the experience. And that goes back to that product being the most important part of learning, in my opinion. When you have to present something in front of somebody, you're going to do a better job than if you know that's going to be chucked in the closet.
I'm just going to go shut my window. You could probably hear the saw that's happening outside right now. This is what happens when you record podcasts in the suburbs, ladies and gentlemen. But what full moment, aha moment that I just had hearing you talk about that example, Mike, because it illuminated to me a barrier that I hear a lot of school teams talking about, which is siloed instruction between academic standards and competency-based work or skill development. And teachers are consistently saying, I need a way that I can integrate these together and make the connections for students. Or school districts that are further ahead are saying, okay, well, we have a portrait, we brought it off the wall, but teachers do academic work on one side, and then they spend 30 minutes once a week for competency work, and they just do activities catered directly to that. And it does have the silo, and it doesn't allow the students to organically make those connections. But in hearing you with this example, what I really loved is that specific call out to the knowledge needed to get the results that you want, because I feel like in education and the community as a broad, there's this massive misconception that these tools that students are using are making them, have the free pass, or they're not allowing them to learn the deep learning skills that they need. Well, that's not true. And you've just allowed us to know, hey, there was a lot of pre-knowledge prior to that activity that a student needed to know to be successful. But the big thing that I love the most was hearing how there's the academic content that they needed to be successful, but then the easy connection to competencies as they're collaborating with their colleagues, as they're using their critical thinking skills and analyzing. So we just brought it really full circle. And I hope that for the listeners that, you could take that example and roll with it, because it just broke down a lot of those barriers that we hear so often.
Absolutely. And again, utilizing the AI tools at your disposal to place your portrait in their knowledge base, as well as your content expectation, your curricular expectations of the content, and then have that conversation with the tool about, I'm really having a difficult time seeing how these two things connect. Here's an example of an activity I need to do. How could I integrate those competencies into this particular situation, given that I have young people who love K-pop? Cool. Here are some examples of how you might do that. Wonderful. That, just gives you carte blanche to be a mad scientist at this particular point and not have to rack your own brain trying to figure out how to connect all these things. Because what I have found that we've done some summer camps the last 3 weeks with teachers. There are teachers who come in tabula rasa, no idea about any of these AI tools, no idea about the portrait or anything. And they leave after 3 hours with, that's actually a strategy I will use in my instruction. You're like, dude, it is not a super difficult leap at this particular point to offload the hours and days and weeks it would take you to look at the competencies you're asked to do, the curricular expectations, and the portrait, and say, you know what, there is a better way for me to do this. And there's a better way for me to do this authentically for the young people through the persona creation, where I'm constantly asking that tool to do a lot of that very quick and efficient work in the background, bring to me something that I can assess and say, yep, that's it, or nope, that's not it. Let me go back to let's go back to the drawing board and add some different flavors to it. Because I think as we start to get more comfortable with the AI tools, as this isn't cheating, this is how we're working in the from 2025 on, or from when OpenAI kind of just busted the doors down on, that this is a workflow that is going to be far more efficient than what we did previously. And I also think it's going to hopefully allow educators to be more fulfilled in their careers going forward, because you'll be able to justify strategically why you're doing things, rather than just saying, I was handed this mandate by whoever hands you your mandates, and I just followed instructions. Right. Being able to very quickly produce a document or a concept that can be handed back to that entity and say, this is a way we can all be happy and get all the things that we want, and have young people leave full at the end of the day.
Right. Mike, as we're wrapping up, how do you see these shifts impacting the future of K-12 education?
I think really my hope is that we're going to have a value-based system again, right? I think that there have been pockets of, hey, everyone is worth. And when we say worth, it's not you're worth something higher than I am or less. Everyone is worth and worthy to be in the space. How Jordan is able to build a product and how I build a product are of equal value. There is no fundamental shift on there shouldn't be a fundamental shift in saying that because Jordan did it this way, he's a better student than I am, or because I did it this way, I'm a better student than Jordan is. There's a situation in which we're building products. We're not worried about the process is important because we're able to articulate, this is what I did and why I did it. Here's the product that's at the end. I'm able to get critical feedback on that output and go back to the drawing board and fix it. One of the things that drives me absolutely mad, Jordan, is I took a test. Great. I got a 67. Great. Do I ever get an opportunity to go back and fix the test? No, that is your grade forever. Like, I don't get an opportunity to go and improve. No improvement. You don't get to improve. That is the grade that you're going to get. You get an F. Well, I got an F at the beginning of the semester, but I've demonstrated that I'm not an F student because at the end of the semester, I got X. No. We're still going to average that F into your grades and you're still going to get the F. Okay, that's messed up.
Yeah.
Like, why are you screwing me over? Because like I in my initial stages of trying to understand something, I failed. Rather than saying, yo, Jordan, let's look how far you've come in your journey to be an XYZ, whatever it is. At the beginning, you didn't know, and this is where portfolios, this is where blogs, this is where all those things come into place. What was the narrative in the experience? And I think that's what really leaning into narrative so that we understand value, in my opinion, is hopefully where we're going as a society, as a world, where, but again, the stories, listeners have read hundreds of books, thousands of books. All the books aren't the same. They're all narratives. They're all stories that you've engaged with, and you didn't say, you might not have liked the story, but you didn't go and say, that's a book that narrative, it still benefited you. You either understood that this is a style or author that I love, or this is a style or author that I don't. There's still this benefit from you that helps you navigate your experiences throughout the world. And I think that's important for us to recognize that whether you like the story or not, that story needs to be written and needs to be read and needs to be contemplated so that, the world benefits from it.
Mm-hmm. Talking and focusing on the process leading to the product.
Absolutely.
Giving students more agency in their learning and helping bring back that value-based system. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here on the show today. It's been a pleasure hearing about these shifts and these examples, and your time is valued by all of us. So again, thank you so much for joining.
I appreciate the invite.
That was distinguished educator and digital innovator, Mike Lang. Hey, thanks for listening to the show, and please make sure to hit the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. I'm Jordan Lewis, and you've been listening to the Growth Over Grades podcast.